Welcome to the Irishman, Englishman and Scotsman Football Podcast. Hello, good evening and welcome to another episode of the Irishman, Englishman and Scotsman Football Podcast. Right, straight in, and we have a little bit of normality back in the Premier League now. The games are on the weekends. The last couple of months have been absolutely hectic with these midweek weekend fixtures. We're kicking off with a cracker at the King Power Stadium at 1:30 Central European time. Leicester, who came out of that poor draw with Wolves against Liverpool, who were in the end hammered by Manchester City. But I don't think that they were hammered, and I did predict Liverpool to score. I said that Liverpool's world-class forwards would trouble them. Now, Kev, you'll go into this, I'm sure, with your in-depth analysis, but from my point of view, the neutral point of view, I thought Liverpool were really in this game. I thought they had plenty of chances, and just one switch really knocked the game on its head. Phil Foden went out to the right wing, and Phil Foden made Andy Robertson look like a Sunday League player for the last 25 minutes. And, of course, obviously, City missed the penalty as well. Liverpool got a penalty, which was a little bit, with Salah. But Liverpool created a lot of chances, I thought, and there's a lot of positive signs. It's defensively seemed to be the problem. But I think effectively now, Kev, you did say before that Liverpool were not in the title race. Surely not now.
No, nowhere near it. I mean, let's face it. And I think if you look at the run of fixtures that Liverpool have got coming up, including this game, sort of starting now with this game at Leicester and then the Champions League and then everything else, and there's Everton on the horizon, I think you're looking at really, I'm not confident actually that things are going to turn around quickly either. I think you're looking at a Liverpool team which, as discussed, in the past, they took some steps to sign a couple of defenders, and let's see how that goes. So let's see if we finally see those players on the pitch. But I think it's more fundamental than that, and I don't think it's just confidence, like Klopp said. I think you're just looking at a team that's lost its spark. It's lost its, it's lost its ability to have fun on the park. And I think we're not getting out of this anytime soon. Liverpool were in the game, you're right, and in the same way they were in the game against Man United, right? And some people thought maybe that would be the turnaround, that getting a point against Man United, who were in very good form at the time, might be it. But honestly, I think there's something wrong. Some of you may remember a few weeks ago I said we should talk to someone who's a fan of the Boston Red Sox about how the management group that oversees this team deals with rebuilding a team that is a champion. And you'll find that Red Sox fans cannot stand the management team. And I wouldn't go that far. I think they've been great for Liverpool, but I don't think they're in the business of rebuilding while they're successful. And I think this is a fundamental problem that's going to be resolved.
I don't know whether or not it's the management team as in the sports group. I think it's actually Klopp's management team that potentially need rebuilding. The main concern that I have with Liverpool, and I think it's fair to say that they are in disarray compared to last year. There's been injuries for months, and tactically there is no plan B. Plan B is to do plan A better. And I think we've seen the opposite happen at Man City, and actually we've seen a revitalised City because of that. The players that Klopp has at his disposal either can't do the system that he wants them to play, or they're too out of form to do it well enough. And I don't think he's protected his players well enough to get them into a position to win games, because there's no doubting that they've got great players and they can do it on occasion, but they just seem to be lacking that consistency. And I think actually changing things up a little bit could potentially help them get out of that funk, so to speak.
Maybe Klopp needs to go to Fenway Park and bring back some of that Boston Red Sox magic. You know what I'm saying? Joe.
You'd never have thought that Liverpool would miss Diego Jota so much, would you? But they seem to have really missed him. And
was that your Diego Jota debut, Joe?
That was my Diego Jota debut. I just had to throw it in there. But I think I read something interesting this week about how Thiago is obviously a wonderful player, but he does seem to slow them down a bit. And they just haven't really found the perfect position for him just yet. And I do worry for them a bit this weekend. I think if there's one team you really don't want to play when your confidence is a little bit slow, you're not playing the best, you don't really want to play Leicester. So I think Leicester could compound the misery on Klopp this weekend.
I'm not sure if Mr. Vardy is playing. He might be still out. I know he had surgery a few weeks ago, and if he's not back, I think Liverpool like I said, they created the chances against Man City. They're one of the only teams in the league to actually go at them. And really, Mane had a header for 1-0, which just one-on-one. I know City were amazing and they deserved to win in the end, but Liverpool had the forwards to score the goals. The new guys came in, those defenders, they're going to take time to bed in. I do agree, Alcantara, we probably won't see the best of him till next season. So I'm actually going to go for a Liverpool win here, Joe.
Yeah, I think Leicester, I give them credit and then they stink the place up against Wolves. I think it could be a draw, to be honest. I think Leicester have enough about them. They're still, vying for a top 4 spot. And I think they're above Liverpool on merit, so yeah.
Okay, draw for you, Finno. And Kevin, your best balking prediction?
Well, just because you said that, I'm going to say Liverpool win then. But only because the away form's been better than the home form, so we'll see.
Good little bit of positivity about the place. Next up at 4 o'clock on Saturday, Central European time, Crystal Palace, who were beaten by Leeds last night, take on Burnley, who drew at Brighton. Did any of you guys watch the game last night, Palace and Leeds? Finno?
No, I didn't watch the Palace game, but I watched the Burnley game, the Burnley-Brighton game, and Burnley had some incredible chances to take all 3 points. And actually, to be fair to them, they played some really nice football going forward, particularly in the second half. So I think Palace will find it tough.
Yeah, I'm not sure if Will Zaha is back either. I mean, a lot of Leeds fans were happy about that. He was injured during the Newcastle game, might be out for a while. So, you'd fancy Burnley to kind of dig out a result here, Joe.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, Palace are a funny team, aren't they? Some weeks they seem to play really well, score some amazing goals, and then other weeks they're just awful. And by all accounts, last night against Leeds, they were terrible. As much as Leeds were good, apparently Palace just had absolutely nothing about them. So I have no idea which way this one will go, but I would think after Burnley's performance at the weekend, where Finno's absolutely right, they should have beaten Brighton. They were fantastic in the second half. I would think that they would beat Palace. Yeah,
Palace are very tough, though. I mean, like, they're defensively, they're very organised, and of course Leeds can attack any team the way they set up. But Burnley, I think this could suit into kind of Palace's game plan. So I'm going to go for a draw here. 6:30, potentially the game of the weekend. Manchester City, new champions-elect against Tottenham. Finno's champions-elect for Christmas at 6:30. Man City, of course, they just can't put a foot wrong. And again, without a recognised striker. And I've seen a rumour today linking them with Messi. They don't need Messi at the minute. And fair play to Pep Guardiola. We were, giving them socks at the start of the season, saying, like Finno said earlier on about Liverpool, they don't have a plan B. But they don't need one at the minute. Tottenham beat West Brom 2-0. West Brom are, for me, already relegated, and the 2 seasons ago this was a big game. But now I see it's only going one way. Finno?
Yeah, and I kind of alluded to it earlier that there have been small tactical changes that Pep have made so that have really kind of galvanised that Man City team. So they play with a back 4 in defence, but actually when they've got possession of the ball, they move it to a back 3, and one of the full-backs goes into the defensive midfielder position, which then allows Gundogan to go roaming, and we've seen it to great effect. I think he's got like 9 goals in 17 games this season in the Premier League. He's been in phenomenal form, and it's because he's been allowed to roam about the place. But Tottenham, they're going to stymie that attack, I think, and it'll be interesting to see who breaks first. I could easily see this being a very boring 0-0, and Jose goes up the road and is very happy with his point.
Mourinho against Guardiola is one to savour, right? This is just wonderful. It's just, regardless of the football, this is just one of those rivalries that you just can't wait to see. And I know I've been saying this for a while, but I do think, what is it? I can't remember if it's 9 or 10 on the spin now. You just get to think that the run has got to come to an end at some point. And wouldn't it just be typical Mourinho if somehow he manages to dig out not just a draw, if he manages to dig out a win? And of course they got Kane, so I assume Kane came back. No Kane, no gain, as they say. And maybe this might be it. Maybe the run comes to an end.
That's a great point from Kev. I think we saw at the weekend how much Kane brings to that team. Even if he's only 30% fit and he just kind of stands up top, they're just a completely different team when he's in the side. He just brings that kind of aura, the captaincy. But I don't think it will be enough to score against the Man City defence, because they're just, Stones, Cancelo, Diaz, they're just so tight at the back. So I just can't see it happening.
Yeah, very true, Joe. They're like machines. The evening game on Saturday, Brighton against Aston Villa at 9 p.m. Brighton, of course, held to a draw by Burnley. Aston Villa, I did tip them to beat Arsenal. They did beat Arsenal. I do believe that they're this team that will kind of break into the top four or possibly five with those games in hand. I think they're good to watch, and they're hard to beat, and they got players in the attacking half of the field that can do damage. And I think they'll beat Brighton here, Joe.
No, I mean, Brighton are unbeaten in 5 and they're playing some really nice stuff. They're full of confidence. Obviously, they've got that kind of monkey off their back of winning their first game in the league at home. They seem to have found a way to have kept clean sheets, and they're starting to score more goals. Villa, obviously Grealish, Barkley are going to cause issues, but I don't think it's a home banker for Villa by any means. It wouldn't surprise me if this one ends in a draw.
It's interesting that Neil Maupay and Ollie Watkins will go up against each other, having both come from Brentford. And I know that this is a Premier League podcast, but I think the total outlay was something like $3.5 million for both of them. And yet I think Maupay was supposed to go for 20 million to Brighton. Similar numbers for Ollie Watkins. I think it just shows the wonders that good scouting can have. Aston Villa, I thought, they weren't necessarily great value for their win against Arsenal. They scored early and then kind of nothing really seemed to happen. Brighton wouldn't need to start winning games, I think, again. But that second half against Burnley wasn't it. And I think we'll see an interesting game, but I think Villa probably have enough.
I think we'll see a tight game. I'm not sure how interesting it's going to be. The only thing I'll say, Villa are one of those teams. They haven't actually turned it on for a while. Again, maybe it's just me as a Liverpool fan. I've got it in my head that they're capable of this absolute magic because of that infamous 7-2, which JP never ceases to remind me of. But actually, it's been a long time. It's been a long time since they've really played well, as opposed to just being quite pragmatic and grinding out results. So I think they will win, but I don't think we're going to see anything spectacular.
Just one more point. I think Brighton are playing in the FA Cup this week and Villa aren't. So Villa will have had quite a few days more preparation time, whereas Brighton will end up playing twice in 3 days or something, which may at this stage of the season, after all the games in January, and I think that was the weekend, Brighton just looked exhausted in that second half against Burnley. So the extra game may count against them.
I just think Villa have more in their armour. You've got Grealish, who's an amazing outlet. Ross Barkley shows up late in the box, like a kind of a poor man's Frank Lampard. Of course, you've got Ollie Watkins, but Traore is a guy who I never could remember his name. Brilliant guy on the ball, on the right side of that three-pronged attack. And I think they're going to do damage this season. I think, they've had a great season so far. They've got a few games in hand. I do believe Villa will be there or thereabouts in the top 4 to 6 at the end of the season. Sunday, 1:00, Southampton against Wolves. Now, I'll harp on about the Newcastle game in a while, Joe. But, it was one of the craziest games I've ever seen, I have to say. And, Southampton were, I thought, poor in the first half. The 2 goals you scored were fantastic. Minamino, what a touch, what a finish, right foot, left foot. The free kick from Ward-Prowse. Like I said, I think he's 1 away from the record in one season of the amount of free kicks scored, which is held by Laurent Robert of Newcastle and David Beckham. Wolves, of course, drew 0-0 once again. I think this could be a game where Southampton could possibly turn things around and possibly get a win.
I think we're in this very strange situation for Southampton again, where we're going to end up playing the same team twice in 3 days. We did it with Arsenal a couple of weeks ago, where we beat them in the FA Cup and then lost them in the league. And I have a horrible feeling that the same thing is going to happen this week. I think we could beat Wolves in the FA Cup, because the FA Cup will be a bit of a release from the pressures of the league, where it's just a 1-game shootout. So I think we could beat them in the FA Cup, but I think when we go back to the league, we'll probably end up losing. Like you say, it was just a insane match and just inconceivable how we played against 9 men for 25 minutes and couldn't score. I can't comprehend how on earth that would happen. But I'm going to look at the positives only. I'm not going to be negative like last week. Minamino's goal was brilliant. He was fantastic. I think he's going to be a fantastic addition. Vestergaard's back, which means that we can drop Bednarak, who's had an absolute shocker for the last few weeks and just needs a rest. And I think the main positive is that we're not bottom. after no wins in 10 games or whatever it is, you think we'd be bottom of the league, but we're not. We have had a good season, and I think we will get back on track at some point.
Joe, it's interesting. Last week you joked that at least England still have Alex McCarthy for England, and yet he gave away an absolute howler for Newcastle's third. I think Southampton, as you say, I think you've summed it up really well. They looked, in patches, they looked really good, and probably like the Southampton of earlier on in the season. Wolves are probably a pretty good team to come up against, but then again, I said that against Newcastle, and look how that turned out for you. So yeah, I don't really know how to call that one.
No one does, do they? But it's just interesting looking at the table that for all the, the missteps that Wolves have had this season, and for when Southampton were top of the table earlier on the season, Wolves win, then they overtake Southampton in the table, which no one could have predicted. 6 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, even something like that. And it has been like, I would not wish ill on Southampton ever, because basically, we got half our team from them. And we got Minamino. That was one I would love to see and hit a rich vein of scoring. But sometimes when you're in that much of a hole, it is hard to dig your way out.
It is. It's interesting you said that. So I think we're 6 points off 17th. We're only 6 points ahead of Burnley. And it was only in December when we were top of the league. So it's just remarkable. I think you're right, Fino. I would expect Fraser Forster to come back in the FA Cup. And if he does well, I think he'll keep his place. I just think McCarthy, after letting in 9 goals, your confidence is just completely shot, and it was a terrible mistake. It was kind of Alisson-esque mistake, wasn't it? Against Newcastle.
Fair play. You can't argue with that.
I think when you've always got a chance, when you've got Ward Prowse stuff from any kind of set piece, the guy's phenomenal. Whoever played right back on Saturday, Joe, was sold down the street by St. Maxime, sold and 2 or 3 times go buy a flag and a cider and come back, and still he couldn't see where St. Maxime was. I mean, Newcastle, don't forget, could have been John Joe Shelby's in front of goal at the start of the second half for 4-1, and then it's curtains. But then all the madness happened after. But I seen enough definitely there with Danny Ings and Che Adams and Ward Prowse, Minamino, to I think you'll get over the line against Wolves. 3 o'clock on Sunday, West Brom beaten by Spurs against Manchester United, who were involved in a crazy game against Everton. The away day Kings. Of course, we'd all fancy Man United to win, but the way Everton got back into that game might be a little bit worrying for Solskjaer. And the way Man United dug themselves back in will be very encouraging. McTominay's header, even though the goalkeeper I thought was very strange and flat-footed, the Everton goalkeeper, Olsen, he just seemed to kind of trip or something. And McTominay's header wasn't exactly, full of venom. But fair play to Everton. Dominic Calvert-Lewin at the last second. I think Man United really will be kicking themselves at the fact that they didn't get all 3 points against Everton. I think they'll take all their anger out on West Brom.
I watched the highlights of the Everton game for Manchester United, and the first thing that came to mind was Kevin I's consistent vocalisation of the fact that De Gea is just not very good anymore. He had a mistake to get Everton back into the game. Defensively, United were all over the place for that final goal from Calvert-Lewin. I think 4 players were marking fresh air. It would be interesting to get a United fan on the podcast to discuss, but when do they pull the plug on him as number 1?
Yeah, Solskjaer obviously he's a big name as well, and he is still one of the best goalkeepers in the world. He's having a bad season, 2 seasons. But I think if this continues, to be honest, we're going to go into, we should go into Alisson really, but De Gea's, his mistakes have been here. They've been a little bit less than last season, I think, but they weren't as blatant as what Alisson did at the weekend. I know Man United have got a wonderful, sub goalkeeper, but maybe Solskjaer's afraid to make that move. Kevin?
I'm not sure it's afraid. I just think it's really hard when it's one of the captains or one of the club captains, and he's on a wage which is stratospheric, because he signed a new contract, and you're looking at someone. I've no idea what the numbers are. I really don't. But I think he may be in that situation where it's just almost impossible for him to drop, And I think it will take some courage, but it's about time it happened. And it's not, it's not the answer to everything. Of course, it's not the answer. We've all seen. You mentioned Alisson there earlier on, and quite rightly. But is the answer to just drop a player? So And Everton as well. They're in that exact same situation where they've had to drop the goalkeeper, but it doesn't automatically mean that results are going to pick up, of course. So it's a big call, but it's a big call as a coach, and it's a big call as a club when it's that important. A franchise player who's on that sort of money.
I think that's a really interesting point, Kev, because it would just become another Mesut Ozil situation, wouldn't it? Where the story every single week is about Ozil or De Gea being on the bench, and it just takes over the whole narrative, and it becomes a massive, massive problem. I think Kev will remember this as well. I think De Gea hasn't been the same player since the World Cup in 2018, when he had a shocker for Spain, didn't he? He was awful, and he got so much stick, and I think he's just never really recovered.
Yeah, it's exactly right. He was a player who he was magical. He almost looked like finally here was the new Iker Casillas. And then suddenly you're in a situation where, a bit of lost confidence, a couple of bad performances, very, very high profile. And it's true, if you speak to people in Spain, no, I don't think people in Spain would think that this guy has an automatic right to that place. He's just not viewed in that way anymore, no.
Yeah, I think it's his name, though, isn't it? He's just a big superstar name. Arsenal against Leeds, 5:30. Arsenal beaten by Villa. Although Arsenal did play quite well in the second half, I thought. In patches. Leeds were pretty impressive against Palace, without having to do too much. Leeds, I think, went above Arsenal in the table after that win. And they're going to go there to the Emirates with absolutely no fear at all. And this could be, if Arsenal come out to play, it could be a decent game, end-to-end football. And I wouldn't be surprised if Leeds come away here with all 3 points. And I got to say, Leeds, before this season, nobody who was a neutral liked Leeds. They just weren't a likeable team. But they've been an absolute breath of fresh air this whole season. They really have. How they play the game is just, it's brilliant. I look at how bad Newcastle were, how defensively they were all season until, Graham Jones came in. Leeds have been just attacked from the very first day against Liverpool when they scored three goals at Anfield. They've just kept the same philosophy, Bielsa ball, as Finno called it earlier on in the season. And, they're great to watch. I can see them possibly beating Arsenal here and carrying on up the table. Joe?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think Leeds will just run all over Arsenal. I think they will run them ragged for the whole 90 minutes. They were very, very impressive against Palace. Could have scored more. Bamford is in fine form. He's being tipped to, get a call up for England. I just think they'll have too much for Arsenal. Arsenal have been very disappointed in the last couple of games. We keep saying this about Arsenal. They're not that good. They managed to kind of pull a few wins from somewhere, but they're not a particularly good team. So I just think Leeds will just, run all over them.
And yet, probably every single time that we've said that Arsenal aren't a good team, they've gone on to surprise us and probably get a decent result. I think for Arsenal, it's their striking options at the moment that are just so poor. Willian, for all the kind of press around him joining from Chelsea, Lacazette was also so poor. There's no real focal point for that team. They're crying out for Aubameyang to come back, and I know he played a little bit against Villa. Leeds have to see this as an opportunity to get all 3 points, and I wouldn't put it past them.
Yeah, the final game on Sunday at Goodison Park, Everton against Fulham. Everton, of course, buoyed by that fantastic last gasp draw against Manchester United. Against Fulham, who are in serious trouble, and they just continue to draw. I watched bits of that Fulham-West Ham game, and, dodgy sending off. Fulham, they had their chances, and they've got guys who can hurt you as well. In the forward position, Lookman and the boy from Chelsea, and of course Mitrovic gets stuck in, but he seems to do better for Serbia than he does for Fulham. Everton, I think, lads, will win this one hands down.
Yeah, look, I think I watched both the Man U Everton game and the Fulham game, obviously, and I thought what was quite interesting was Everton have Luca Digne playing on the left wing rather than at the left back position. So he's able to get a bit more forward. I know that we talked about his defensive frailties in the game against Newcastle. We talked about Pickford's small arms in the previous podcast, but Olsen had, as you said, JP, that crack and slip, which made him look as if he had 6-inch arms for McTominay's goal. Everton, I think, probably do have enough here. I'm looking at Fulham's last 5 games. They've picked up 3 points. Seeing more and more that gap, between Burnley and Fulham just widen ever deeper.
Moving on, 2 games on Monday, 7 o'clock. West Ham host Sheffield United. Finno, I mean, obviously West Ham have been doing so well recently, and I think they'll be a little bit disappointed not to take all 3 points against Fulham. Sheffield United were value for money against Chelsea and really gave them a game. I think they'll put it up to West Ham as well, but this could be a decent one to watch, Finno.
I'm just going to keep being negative about West Ham because it seems like every time I get a little bit of confidence, we end up dropping points. It was a gut punch, I think, for West Ham fans. It'll be interesting to see we play Man United tonight, Tuesday, in the FA Cup. It'll be interesting to see what kind of team gets put out there, because I think if we do prevail there, we've got a decent chance of, going deep in that competition, and then maybe the league becomes less of a priority. Hopefully we get the points, and that's probably all I'm going to say there. Biggest talking point, as you've alluded to before, VAR and Mike Dean. I see that the red card's already been rescinded, almost immediately. And the thing that I want to just talk upon is he looked at the decision 23 times to make his decision. Now, I think we need to have an element of a discussion. People talk about rugby and tennis and those sorts of sports where video refereeing or TMOs have been brought in. They're not looking at a situation 23 times to make a decision. They're looking at it, maximum of 10 before they make a general common sense call.
I thought there was a glitch on my TV when I seen it. I thought it was like going back, but he just kept looking and looking and looking. But in a way that, obviously this gets rescinded. We've got VAR now. Okay? We can look at these situations. The benefit of VAR is that we can look back at it. But also, in review, if consistently a referee is making these mistakes and the red card's been rescinded, which means that he made the mistake, should he then not get a ban for a while? Should Mike Dean not be allowed referee? I know he got the death threats, and that's terrible. Anyone to get death threats is terrible. But I mean, from a referee's point of view, you could cost people their career with your mistakes. So should the Premier League not have a board of ex-referees who can say, right, you've made this mistake consistently in a few weeks, and you need to sit out for a while?
I do think there is some element of appraisal, shall we say, and I know that referees do go down the leagues for a couple of weeks if their performance has been substandard, and I think it just so happens that Mike Dean has had a couple of very high-profile substandard games. So yeah, obviously we can't condone any sort of promise of violence towards him or his family. But yeah, I think probably the best situation for him there is to just get his confidence up a bit as well. Take a couple of games in the Championship or League One and, start to build up that confidence of, making the right decisions and not necessarily relying on the VAR side of things to quite the same degree.
Yeah, good point there, Finno. A final game of the weekend on Monday night, 9 o'clock at Stamford Bridge. Chelsea, who can't stop winning now under Thomas Tuchel, also play in the FA Cup on Thursday night, home to Barnsley, I think. It's away to Barnsley, actually, against Newcastle United. Now, Newcastle will be down to the bare bones. And I don't want to pull a Kev here and complain about defenders there, but there was 5 defenders out for the Southampton game. 2 defenders, Fabian Schär and Manquillo, are out for the season now. They're gone for the season. Jeff Hendrick, of course, sent off stupidly for 2 fouls on Minamino, and he's out. Colin Wilson could be out for a long time as well. So Newcastle are down to the bare bones. What I will say on the positive side about this game is that I thought Newcastle were really entertaining, and they really took it to Southampton from the off. Wilson had the ball in the net for offside. Maxima, they couldn't. They'd no answer to him, and 2-0 could have been 3-0. There was 3-1 before half time. This new role where Almiron is in, playing behind the striker or almost up front, really suits him. But I'll go back to John Joe Shelby and that chance with his right foot. He's a right-footed player. He let it go across with his left foot. That was in front of goal for 4-1, and then it's game over for me completely. But this was the craziest game I've seen all season. It had absolutely everything from red cards to bloody penalty shouts to balls cleared off the line to, 9 men. Joe, I thought Newcastle were fantastic. Really did. I've never bit my nails out for so long. But I gave us absolutely no chance against Chelsea. And the reason why that win was so important against Southampton was because Man United are also up after Chelsea. So these 2 games, I don't expect us to get anything. But the way the table's going, we need those points, and anything can happen.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you 100% actually. And I would love to think that you got a chance in this game, but I don't think you have. I think it's going to be one of those games where you're, depleted, but also emotionally and physically and psychologically a bit shattered after that one. I think it's going to be really hard to pull out another result another performance like that, and I don't think it's going to happen. Love to think it's a possibility, but nah, Chelsea got this one.
I'll continue to use the glimmer of hope analogy for Newcastle, and the only glimmer of hope for Newcastle, I think, is the fact that it looks like Thiago Silva still won't be fit, nor will Pulisic, and we saw with Rudiger that the mistakes are there. So yeah, I mean, maybe that will help. It'll be interesting again to see. I know that there was a lot of chat about Joe Willock after the game, how he performs in a game that is a bigger team. He's come from Arsenal. This should be the level that Arsenal's youth players should be aspiring to come into these games and play well. Can he kind of really drive this Newcastle team forward? I'm not saying he can do it on his own, but yeah, let's see.
He couldn't have started any better, with the goal, albeit it was a tap in from Saint-Maximin's good work. He provides a lot of energy in midfield because John Joe Shelby's a fantastic passer of the ball, but for me, he hasn't got much of an engine. He can pick you out from 50, 60 yards, but tracking back, box to box, he's not that kind of player. What I would like to speak about briefly is Dwight Gale. Now, I said Almiron is out. Joe Linton, if you're going to go Joe Linton or Carroll, it's going to be long ball. I don't think Newcastle will revert to that style that got us that 10-game run without winning a game. They started to press high and, go forward. And but for some reason, Steve Bruce is not picking Dwight Gale. So I think he's got to give him a go here. And you're playing Chelsea away, nothing to lose. I'd say go and have a crack, and hopefully we will. And, you never know. I don't give us much hope, to be honest. But, there's a poetic chance. And speaking of poets, we have our own Kev. What have you got for us this week, Kev?
I've got a confession that I'm in the middle of a virtual works leaving to. So the recital of this one might be a bit tricky. Anyway, here goes. Oh, captain, my captain, we're on a fearful run. A keeper's fatal missteps and Man City have it won. There'll be no season's glory and no title for these Reds, as a side once so imposing loses heart gets torn to shreds. Match week 23 this year has proved the crucial moment, confirming Guardiola has no serious opponent. A 4-0 win at Anfield takes Pep's heroes 5 points clear, a game in hand's insurance as United's faint veneer. Of true league title aspirants looks thinner than before, as Everton claw back to clinch a last gap 3-3 draw. 12 goals in 5 days for Ollie's trigger-happy squad. A curler from Fernandes seemed a blessing straight from God. But with City in this mood, you can't let it slip a 2-0 lead or back ahead with the game's final kick again concede. Still further down the table, there was much for us to relish, plus a Fulham West Ham 0-0 that was absolutely hellish. A thriller at St James's Park was comfortably the highlight, with the tension of the Hunger Games and all the bite of twilight. Almiron stuck twice and there was one for Joseph Willock. A bad pass from McCartney made him look like a real pillock. 3-1 down at half-time with the panorama tragic. Saints were right back in it as James Ward-Prowse worked his magic and showed us all again he's such a talented young fellow. His free-kick arrows home, and what do you know? A second yellow leaves Newcastle down to 10 and soon they're left with 9. Ings comes close, but Saints can't quite arrest their stark decline. So there you have it. Liverpool, Southampton in free fall. Tottenham and Chelsea have their backs against the wall. Both are now back winning, but it feels a bit too late, with City safely perched after winning 9 games straight. But where there's life, there's hope, they say, and perhaps there's just a glimmer. On Saturday, as the rest of us sit down to eat our dinner, it's City versus Spurs, as spicy as a jalapeno. And just this once, I'm cheering Spurs. Vamos, Senor Mourinho.
Brilliant stuff, Kev. Thank you very much.
Thank you. See you again soon.
Fino, thank you.
Cheers, guys.
Joe, thank you very much.
Nice one. Thanks, JP.
All right, folks. As always, don't forget, if you are listening on YouTube, don't forget to hit that subscribe button on the bottom right-hand side and the old bell notification. And also, that's our second episode of our Away Day Confessions. Newcastle fans is out on our YouTube channel this week. Give it a listen. Hopefully, Sunday morning, we'll have another one for you in around about 12 o'clock Central European time. Thanks a lot, folks, and enjoy the games. Thank you for listening. If you'd like to hear more of our podcasts, please click on the red subscribe button on the bottom right-hand side. Thank you.